I'm back. I'm glad you're still watching K24's New Dawn. My name is Joel Chacha. Now, we focus on this. It has been revealed that the National Treasury spent 47 billion on fuel subsidy. Remember, President William Ruto had suspended the policy that he got on fuel subsidy. Honorable James Gakuya. This is a contradiction of what the president promised on reversing the policy that he found. In fact, this money, according to the details from the National Treasury, was spent between April and June to stabilize the retail fuel prices.
Let me say that, in fact, it's only a fool who cannot change his mind. Because what guides you, and especially in the growth of economy, is you wear a shoe today, and then you walk with it, then you feel where the pinches are. And after realizing where the pinches are, then you'll be able to know that this is not my size, let me look for the size. In this particular case of fuel issues and subsidy, if we want also to sustain the growth of our economy, something has to be done. And if things are not working in the normal way, then you should look for extraordinary ways to make things work.
So it's proper for President William Ruto to bring back the fuel subsidy?
One, I can ask you, Joe, yes. What's wrong by having such a subsidy and then allowing now the prices of the fuel to be at the same level?
But this, Honorable Gakuya, the same government has increased the road maintenance levy by 7 shillings. If at all the intention is to stabilize the fuel prices, why not bring, first of all, such punitive policies that were rejected even by Kenyans during the public participation, and going ahead to introduce again 47 billion, being used between the month of April and June. That is about only 2 months or 3 months. 47 billion, meaning a year could gobble up.
Before 7 shillings were effective.
So the 7 shillings was the intervention.
Yes, I want to say that because 7 shillings, if you looked at it, it's focusing on road sector. It's on maintenance on roads. It has nothing to do with stabilizing the prices. But remember, fuel, oil, is the critical driver of economy for the country. It is the duty of National Treasury. It is the duty of National Treasury to stabilize prices. Inflation has been always based on the aspect of fuel price. Fuel is a question of global price on supply and demand. It is something, it's not static. It's something that you cannot control direct. But if you feel the pressure, the shock of it changing in the global market is going to deter or shift the situation and the condition in your country, what does Treasury do? To immediately respond to it. It's a question of responding, and it's not constant. And the law is very clear about the function of National Treasury. So what happened in April, what happened up to June, was the global challenges on fuel price that was oscillating and in constant. Treasury had to move in with speed so that the cost of production, the cost of operation would go in a flattened line and enable other sectors to come up. Because remember, we have a very fragile economy that is beginning to recruit again. The leaves are coming up slowly by slowly. I mean, there is hope. So we don't need to kill it. So Treasury, what it's doing now is to take over the shock and then allow it to go back.
Honorable Gakuya, the issue here is the fact that President William Ruto told Kenyans that he is not going to continue with the fuel subsidy matter.
And there
was even an introduction of G2G.
Gakuya has answered you. It's only a fool who will just be constant.
So it's proper for President William Ruto to take a U-turn.
Because actually,
then he should
is advised by the outcomes of the growth. And actually, Joe, it is very clear.
Which one is what?
You know very well that, in fact, it was a time that, in fact, maybe six months ago, when the fuel prices were at the peak, and every sector was crying. But in fact, things has worked. Things has stabilized.
Maybe Joe is missing covering protests and strikes on the streets.
I think
if at all, perhaps the government has a good intention of stabilizing fuel prices. First, the appellate court, that is the Court of Appeal, before now the government went to the Supreme Court challenging the nullification of the Finance Act of 2023, would it let the VAT on fuel be at 8% and not 16%? As a show of goodwill, rather than imposing VAT at 16%, then using 47 billion in 2 months in, the fuel subsidy that the president had already withdrawn.
I think the Court of Appeal is normally very clear. When we see a Supreme Court coming in place, it's coming to rescue the situation, because clearly the law needs to be also followed. And one of the things, actually, I don't see the problem, because what the president said when he came to power is that he's going to ensure the forces of demand and supply take the day. One of the things that the honorables have said, yes, as much as there's not a full, anyone should be allowed to change their mind, but we should have first be shown what happened with the forces of demand and supply, especially if oil is the anchor of the economy and is a driver for most of the areas in the economy.
They even introduced a G2G deal.
Yes. What happened to when it came to the forces of demand and supply? What informed the government in the Finance Bill 2024 to increase VAT by double from 8% to 16%? That's punitive. Actually, it's very punitive. Why do I say it's punitive? Because oil actually is one of the commodities that is bought by everyone from up the scale to down to the common mwananchi. What changed? What were the metrics? Actually, one of the biggest problems, Chacha, we have in the stabilization of this economy is transparency. Why doesn't government, why is transparency not there? Why can't we be shown? This is what costs issues in the areas of demand and supply and other taxes, because actually there is no contention in other taxes. But what costs the increase of double taxing from one year to the other? I think it's not very clear. Can that be shown why? What are the reasons? And one of the things that actually common mwananchi will want has always supported the government, even when the petrol and diesel and everything else is very expensive in this country. Common mwananchi has always gone and bought, even when they sometimes in 2 years' time, I think the pumps were dry. People were queuing until 2 a.m., 3 a.m. But why?
G2G came to sort out that.
Yes. Then why are you guys then? Why there's no transparency? Can that be seen to be there? Then at least common mwananchi will not feel robbed.
Perhaps, Honorable Gakuya, with the same energy that the president announced vacating the policy on fuel subsidy, is it high time also he comes out clean that he has reintroduced the same?
Joe, what I can tell you is that, in fact, the caution is not a permanent situation. It depends on when the pressure is high. And how do you do? I think that, in fact, in management, as a president, you have a duty to make sure that everything is running in order. And if they can't...
Communication to the public.
No, if the economy has to...
And even who are paid this for 7 billion.
I can also tell you, it is not only the presidential pronouncement, because they are the agencies which deals with these things. Actually, the Treasury, because at the end of the day, Treasury is the one which gives out this kind of money. And at the time they are doing this, they should be public. We are doing this because of ABCD. If we should not give the public, the president, a duty and a mandatory duty to keep explaining to the people every other day when the institutions are there. The institutions should speak and tell the public why.
The buck stops with the president, Honorable Ruto.
In any case,
should your namesake
we have managed
come out clean
on
on
these issues of public participation to a level now. I don't know who's going to help us really divine the meaning of this public participation. That before you choose to wear your dress, that beautiful dress you have done today, Ruth, you must come out and say, oh, public, can I put on this one? What am I trying to say? The president and the National Treasury have a duty divine by law, and they're acting in trust. You know, the purpose of election is to have a representation of the people. And the purpose, because all Kenyans cannot make a decision at a given time in one, it is difficult. The people who have been elected have been given the sole mandate to make a decision that is in good interest of the public.
We'll be seeing
and for this purpose, why the president vacated this one? Because it was number one. The earlier thing, the earlier approach on the subsidy was very expensive. The reduction of 8%, you know, it needed the government to plan appropriate resources to be able to compensate the business, the traders, the 8% that were giving out to public on the reduction of VAT, which needed liquid cash to support the economy. And up to now, believe you me, there are traders that are still following up in the corridors of KRA and Treasury, asking for their compensation
Well,
for the fuel they supplied. But for this purpose of allowing the normal supply and demand, allow the business to run, and in the long run also give the shocks that when there is an opportunity that the world price comes down, opportunity transfers to the people. When the prices goes up, it is the government to protect.
Ruth, you have something to say?
That doesn't normally happen. That's the problem. And actually, if the issue of representation was working, the issue, Article 10, the issue of public participation would also not come into the play. The reason why actually public participation has always been an issue is because it is seen to be consultative with the people. The problem is when it comes to, and that is why the finance bill was so, 2024 was so contentious and was thrown out even by the public, is because some of the things that were being introduced were very punitive. They were not sustainable. Do you know what is happening, Honorable Ruto? It showed a very big disconnect with the representatives, yeah, and the ground. You know, and that is the main problem. Also, from an advisory perspective, I also blame the advisory perspective. The president shouldn't be coming out here to explain everything clearly, especially when he has people on the ground. So the issue of representation also becomes a disconnect because whether it's the people at Treasury or people at KRA or whoever, it looks like the right hand and the left hand are not also communicating, do not know what they are.
We touch on the Price Control Essential Goods Amendment Bill 2024. That seeks to enact the 2011 Act, where the CS will have an opportunity to fix minimum and maximum retail and wholesale prices for essential goods such as maize, flour, cooking oil, sugar, rice, among others. And this will be monitored by the Price Control Unit. Honorable Gakuya, this bill that is before the National Assembly on price control. Is it a good one?
One, let me tell you, Joe. As much as this country adopted the model of what you call liberalization, it's also important to have some caveats. One, once you allow now the market to control, there is the misuse, there are equally some misuse, where you find that in fact the consumer sometimes is so much pressurized to buy some commodities at a very high rate. If there can be a control, the control could be better, so that in fact what you can buy at Naivas at 10 bob, you will find it in another supermarket at 10 bob. But there's no way that actually you'll be having what you call a commodity on a farm A, but farm B and C, they are totally different figures. Number two, as we address that point, also let us not forget that in fact we had the law, and that law was amended in 2016. Which was also giving a caveat on how you can be able to register a company in this as a foreigner, and what percentage you can own. Today, we have an open check where a foreigner can come in, register a company 100% and own it 100%. I think it's high time we must also look on those areas, because I still believe that in fact is an area we should also address, because we have issues where traders, local traders who are indigenous have what you call complaints, and for serious effect with how the trading barriers are. And you realize that those who did trading in China, when the conditionalities there are totally different here. So there is areas of concern where you should not allow foreigners to be hawkers. You cannot allow them to be retailers. Give a caveat on at what level they can be able to.
So this bill is here in good faith.
It is in good faith.
Honorable
and also, I want to address something else which is not coming in. We have what we call multinational companies, but we have killed our local content. Where you don't protect those small areas like transport, number two, areas of warehousing and security. You realize that some of these multinational companies still give these services to foreigners. If it's a matter to do with maybe East African brewery, do you want to say that our business is only to take beer? We don't have business to have some businesses to put business within as a rock content. So those are areas of concern we should do, and I think it's high time we should bring a bill towards those directions to protect our indigenous people.
Honorable Ruto, for instance, for fuel, where EPRA manages the prices, comparing it to other East African nations, you'll find our fuel prices are expensive. I come from a border town, Isibani, next just to Tanzania, and most motorists will prefer fueling in Tanzania, not in Kenya. And if at all we talk of the prices being determined by the market compared to regulation by a body, in this case now the CS being able to fix the minimum, the maximum retail prices, could we have a situation where something that opts to be cheaper, it's made expensive? On this price control essential goods amendment bill, is it a welcome move or something Kenyans should be worried?
Joe, starting from the fuel, the last time I saw analysis in East Africa and African fuel pump price, I think Kenya was better off, especially where the crisis was global. Even Tanzania was expensive. There was a time it was analyzed. I don't know, because I may not use fuel as a determinant, because this is something that is changing, and because all of us, we source it abroad, we don't produce here, so some factors goes beyond. But only I know the other issues is taxation that plays also a critical role. On this issue of price control, I still believe Sokohuru, where Moi allowed Sokohuru, and Sokohuru allows natural way of supply and demand to work, and at times it works in favor of consumer, at times it works in favor of the trader, of the producer for this case. Where I'm also keen, I'm very particular, using the edible oil, for example. Do you know critically it's only few guys, almost less than 5, that are importing, even those we call manufacturing in Kenya. They're importing every entire raw material, the crude oil. So only few guys who have ability to bring in to the Republic of Kenya that raw material, the crude palm oil, in the volumes that is required for them to come and refine here, repackage it, or package it or repackage it. Some of them bring it as a finished product. Those guys, you know, they have ability to go and sit down somewhere and determine the price without disclosing the factors, the structure of the cost. So why I want to believe that we need to have a sound regulation, not a determinant, not a deterrence to the aspect of creating an environment of free movement of goods and services, competition, fair competition, and looking at the quality again at the same time for what Kenyans should consume. Remember, we have also a duty to look at the quality. So I'm keen to know how this particular entity is going to put its muscles in place so that we protect the consumer. Because in this case, Kenya is a net importer. You know, we are the trading economy. We are not producing. So even at times we are disadvantaged, because had we an opportunity to manufacture in our own sense, then we would have a benchmark of controlling, because we're able to control the cost. But for this case, we are improving the business for other countries. The people sit down, they manufacture for the market of Kenya. And
So
since now, and since where we are now, let us have another high that is able to trace, ability to know the country of origin, the cost element in freight, up to including a given margin. So that you do a good business, we have a clear, what you call best business practices in place for the purpose of giving a Kenyan who is a net consumer an opportunity to manage the cost of living. But we should have some limits, not to rule out, not to protect, not to destroy.
Well, Ruth, as an economist, talk to the disadvantages of having such a bill in place, where a CS fixes prices, minimum and maximum retail prices and wholesale prices. Could there be, you know, a possibility of certain, you know, traders in a particular commodity even bribe the CS to put their price, you know, somewhere, so that there's even kickbacks?
Actually, and that is why I think today we've talked a lot about the market forces of demand and supply and the equilibrium. So one of the things I remind you, Chacha, is about 2 years ago, when the prices of unga was triple. And the president, by the time he was coming, he said the prices of unga will have to go to normal. And right now, the price of unga is around 100 shilling. What removed that from around 300 shilling to 100 shilling? Yeah, there are some of these hoarding capability behind the scene, and what my fellow CPA is saying, like you have like a few people who are controlling a whole sector. If there's one thing that I've always advocated for, and actually if there's something that the government has, is resources. From research, from mechanism, there's nothing the government doesn't have. I normally look at the reports that normally come from Kenya Bureau of Standard in terms of even dictating prices and just trying to show how the movements are and the comparison between our neighboring countries. And if you look at those reports, they are so detailed. They understand even, you know, individual commodities. There's nothing that the government doesn't have in place to be able to make informed decisions. But when we cap something that control masses to one person or to a few, then that, I can tell you, it's a disaster in waiting. The other thing also I would like to poke hold is most of the commodities in Kenya, I'm sorry to say, they are very overpriced. They are very expensive. And that can come down if only there can be interventions by the government wanting to understand, using this research, and actually negotiating with manufacturers and importers and people controlling sectors. And actually, that can be one of the mainstream areas that the government can even be able to know what to tax, what is not taxing, because there are a lot of things that are not taxed, and understand people's businesses.
We're beginning
Without
to end
that,
up.
it's going to be difficult to fund even the kind of budgets that are going to be
beginning to end up. Now, Honorable Gakuya, you know, there is a satellite internet that is Starlink that has entered the Kenyan market, disrupting the market. In fact, you know, it has unveiled a new, cheaper data plan for Kenyans, and it's hitting competition for the local telcos that includes Safaricom, Airtel, Zuko, among others, as we end up.
Today it's quite an interesting day, and this area of interest is quite in order. And what I would say, in fact, as much as our law stands, we amended the law in 2016, and we created that room for liberalization. And therefore, it tells you any company can come in as much as it complies with our set regulations. And if it complies, then it moves to the field. That is how we realize that actually we had area taxes, which we normally use, and currently we have Uber, and Uber has also gone to what we call piki-piki Ubers. This is a serious competition in business, and I think we need to also to get innovated so that at the end of the day, the consumer is the one gets the profit at the end of the day. So I think that competition to me is healthy.
Honorable CPA Ruto has went up.
Yes.
On the Starlink,
it's a welcome.
Elon Musk.
The only question I want to ask, a reserved question, is how is our data protection, security of our data? Otherwise, for quite some time, Monopoly has some have pressed us. Lastly, on the issues of subsidy, someone has concern, as Justin Pox me, that this subsidy was actually meeting the obligation that was pending from the previous regime. It was still under scrutiny. And in support of Baba, let me not forget that one, to tell Kenyans, let's pray for Baba to succeed. But the question I'm asking you, Baba, before this
do you have a vote?
It's
good and better you
wait fast. Yeah. Baba, before this administration, had people like the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, who used to call each other brother. I never saw them coming to State House. What happened to friends? Do you mean these friends are not static? I was expecting Kalonzo,
we're running out of time.
Excitement and support.
I think three things here. First, I've told you many things are priced, and introduction of Starlink is one of the things that is a demonstration. Actually, by yesterday, you could hear that these things have all been bought. There was none in the supermarket or anywhere. That is one.
Even Safaricom yesterday reduced.
They
increased the speed of their
yeah.
the internet.
It is good for
not
all of
even
us.
that. Without even increasing, do you know they even refused that they can pay, which is the biggest mistake, business mistake they have made. You'll watch that in the future. Secondly, the other thing I also want, as an economist, and maybe as a finance person, I think corporate governance should really be brought back to public entities, because there's so much taxes government is not collecting from itself. And thirdly, that thing also to comply, let forces of demand and supply be allowed to work in the economy.
Let's now sample some feedback before wrapping up Newdon this morning. That is via social media platforms at K24 TV, Joel Church, and as well on our SMS and WhatsApp numbers on the bottom of the screens. Bob Nyakundi saying kickback ishalipo. I pity those KA people. They have been told the deal must pass whether the employees and stakeholders want it or not. This is on the Adani JKA deal. Muiga Mwangi, wake up Kenyans, wake up. The problem is even if we vote them out in 2027, they will have put us in the drain already. Those are just some of the feedbacks from our viewer this morning. And that's all here on the New Dawn, even as we focus on the state of the economy. My guest in studio from the far end, that is Ruth Kinyanjui, an economist, Honorable CPA Julius Ruto, member of the Finance Committee of the National Assembly, also MP Keses, and Honorable James Gakuya, Chair of the Trade Committee of the National Assembly, and as well Embakasi North Member of Parliament. My name is Joel Chacha, and do enjoy the rest of your viewing. Good day.